Did you know that Dainsleif was the name of a mythological sword that once drawn could not be sheathed until it had killed a man? And that any wound left by it was destined to never heal? Was that Dane's role as the Twilight Sword? Or did you know that in the same epic play from which the Dragon King Nibelung gets his name, there were mysterious golden apples who were said to keep the gods young forever? Or that Ajax, Child's real name, is inspired by the Greek warrior Ajax the Great, one of the champions of the Trojan War, and second only to Achilles. He was known to be of exceptional courage and strength, and his younger half-brother was Teucer. These are just some of the unexpected backstories behind the names in the game of Genshin, and they usually give us some handy hints about the lore of these characters as well. This is the Unlikely Genshin Gamer, and I thought it might be fun to make a list of some of the coolest and most obscure references that Hoyoverse has used to name the characters in Genshin Impact. Since there are so many things in-game to choose from, I've decided to pick and choose some of the most striking ones to list here in a sort of alphabetical order. If you have a name you'd like me to do in a subsequent video, let me know, and maybe I'll get enough to do this again. As it is, this first round will already comprise 2 videos, so stick around for part 2. Now, without further ado, let's begin at what could easily be considered the beginning of the game's lore. Aether. Aether has multiple meanings in the real world, but the one that seems to most influence the character of Aether when considering the style of Genshin Impact is one in reference to the Greek deity of the sky, whose name was Aether. He was also considered to personify brightness or shining light, and interestingly, his son's name is Kalos, the name of one of the protagonists in Honkai Star Rail. His name also has another very interesting potential meaning that is directly connected to his twin Lumine. So stay tuned for part 2 when I get to the letter L to learn about some cool implications for the lore that includes both of them. Alberich. Alberich is another famous name in the lore community for its meaning and implications. It's pulled from a German opera drama called The Ring of the Nibelung. This work has references all over the game. Some are quite subtle, and others are glaringly suggestive of a deeper meaning, such as the name of Kaya's family line. Alberich in the story is the name of the dwarf king of a set of supernatural beings. Considering the name also was attributed to a 12th century French monk who founded a special order, it's fitting that his name has been given to the founder of the Abyss Order in the game. All the Conrian names we have encountered use the Norse naming system, in fact, which means dwarves here does not refer to short people, but rather the original meaning of dwarves, which were cave dwellers, and the Conrians lived underground. That means the name Alberich lines up with the lore of this family very nicely indeed. Alhaitham. Alhaitham's namesake lines up with his design very nicely as well. His name alludes less to his lore and more to his direct personality. The man his name is inspired by is almost certainly Ibn Alhaitham, a medieval Persian mathematician and physicist known as the father of modern optics, the study of light, mirrors, and lenses. As a cool additional tidbit, at one point in his life, this Alhaitham was at odds with the ruling body in Cairo at the time, and legend has it he pretended to be mad while hiding from that caliph until the end of his reign, when Alhaitham was able to resume normal life. Does this perhaps mean that Azar can be considered a caliph? Next is Baal. The undisputed most referenced material for the lore of the game so far, as noted by many lorists, is the occult book, the Ars Goetia, also known as the Lesser Key of Solomon, said to be a book of spells used to bind various demons. The names of the demons coincide with many entities in the game, and their descriptions are often strikingly similar to the deities that are inspired by them. Watch out for this work to be referenced again and again. Baal, the hidden name of the former Electro Archon Makoto, is found in this grimoire as well, and although the correlations so far are quite obscure compared to other Archons' names, interestingly, this demon was known to embody the power of invisibility, which does correspond with the Raiden Shogun of the time, who was constantly hidden by her body double A, so much so that the people did not know there were two of them at all. Barbatos is also a demon name from that book, and unlike Baal, the similarities between them are much more direct. Barbatos was known to travel with 4 kings and their armies, could talk to animals and birds, had knowledge of past and future events, and was said to reconcile disputes between friends and reveal hidden treasures to others. Seeing as Venti has even proclaimed himself to be capable of some of these things, and is definitely hiding some secrets, it's a very interesting potential profile of the Animal Archon. Chlothar and Caribert. For the category of sea, we have the names of Chlothar and Caribert from the last Dainsleif quest, and while their names line up very directly with the names of 2 Germanic kings of the Merovingian dynasty, who ruled in what is now modern-day France, it's not clear yet what this means for their lore. Both Chlothar I and II had sons named Caribert, and both Chlothars had sons outside of their main marriage. But Chlothar I is who treated his illegitimate son the way Chlothar in the game treated his son with a Mondstadt woman, and Chlothar II is whose somewhat illegitimate son was named Caribert. It's safe to say at this point that the inspiration for these 2 characters is blended from their namesakes, but what it could mean for the story of the Loom of Fate in-game is not clear yet when analyzing their history. I hope the Dainsleif quest when it gets here will shed light on this. Elynas and The Melusines. Since I've already mentioned Dainsleif in the intro, let me now introduce a character in the category of E. The strange abyss dragon Elynas, or should I say King Elynas. The legend of King Elynas is an interesting story. During the time of the Crusades, Elynas was said to be a king of present-day Scotland who fell in love with a supernatural woman named Prety. Before agreeing to marry him, she made him swear that he would never look upon her as she bathed or birthed their children. But when he broke this promise, Prety took her 3 daughters, Melusine being the oldest, away to a far land in anger and lived apart from him. When the girls were old enough to ask why this was so and heard the sorry tale, Melusine, in anger for her mother, went back and imprisoned her father Elynas in a mountain and killed him. Her mother, enraged at this vicious act, cursed Melusine to look like a 2-tailed water serpent from the waist downwards. Considering the fact that Melusines look like water creatures, that Elynas is the father of Melusines and lies dead under the mountain, it is a very fitting reference. Fatui. The Fatui have an entire section all to themselves, owing to the very direct and nuanced reference to the Italian theater known as Commedia dell'arte that serves as their inspiration. Fatui means fool in Latin, something the Fatui have proudly proclaimed themselves to be, and their harbingers all derive the names of their station from that popular morsel of early Italian comedy, which means comedy of the profession. Il Capitano, often a self-styled military captain. Dottore, usually a wealthy, decadent scholar or doctor, and not normally liked. Columbina, the trickster lady, often the smartest person in the room, yet very unassuming, either because of her small stature or because of her perceived innocence. Arlecchino, or Harlequin sometimes, a devilish character usually dressed in a tight-fitting pantsuit and known for their scheming ways. Pulcinella, the cunning socialite willing to go to great lengths to climb the rungs of society. An opportunist with an exaggeratedly large nose and a potbelly, yet usually more morally considerate than his fellows. Scaramouche was often portrayed as short and conceited with an attitude problem, single-minded in his goals, and his part began to be associated with puppetry in later years as well. Pantalone, the sometimes emotional, wealthy man, utterly concerned with safeguarding his money and social status, sometimes described as exceptionally greedy. In-game, Pantalone is very invested in safeguarding the Golden House in Liyue for Snezhnaya, and runs the Northland banks with its branches in various nations. La Signora, a proud, haughty woman with distinct self-interest, always strikingly dressed, beautiful, and cunning. Tartaglia, the stutterer. He is usually not taken seriously, can't see very well, and is representative of the lower working class. Sandrone was the part of the clever, cunning spokesman for the impoverished or disadvantaged, and was later depicted with puppets instead of actors. Although we know next to nothing about Sandrone, it's possible that some aspects of this characterization may appear in her character in-game. And then, of course, is Pierrot, the jester, the part of the sad clown who represented the disenfranchised peoples. Lonely and isolated, he was the champion for those who were sidelined and mistreated by society. Very much in character with what we know about Pierrot of the Harbingers, former royal mage of Conria. And almost every character of the Commedia dell'arte was played with the addition of their iconic masks. Rather than giving them an air of comedy, as one might think, these references make everything that the Fatui do, especially their proclamation to wholeheartedly play the fools in this grand show that is the story of Teyvat, seem all the more ominous. When we come back for part 2, we'll be looking into the likes of Rheindater, Paimon, Lumine, and Wriothesley of all people, who holds a surprising connection to Rheindater, which means you mustn't miss out on part 2 if you've enjoyed this so far. As always, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more of this sort of content, and I'll see you right in the next one.